I'm sorry about all the mess ups, but like
No, it was
my
fine.
brain went a bit fuzzy there. Too many big words, man.
Yeah, I think you did perfectly reading it. Like, man, it was a lot of words just kind of fill up your mouth, and it's like, how speak again? Man, I think you did fine. You did absolutely fine. I'll read the two next ones. So 6 and 7, and then you can read 8 if you want. You want to read 8 with a voice mode?
Sure. What one do you think?
Well, I will let you pick, Dingo.
Demon one.
Sounds closer to Optimus Prime in my ears.
Shut up!
We're haunted by Optimus Prime. No.
How about this? I do this shit! There was once a spooky man in a spooky land,
And he exterminated.
and he fucking killed everybody! Truly monstrous.
Oh, fuck me.
Well, if you insist.
Oh, God. It's getting really warm in here now. Oh, Jesus. Alright. Number 6. It started as a leak. The rainy season began in early summer, and June had been no exception. It did not surprise the man when he discovered rainwater dripping from his dining room ceiling. Shrugging it off, he placed a tall pot beneath the leak and expected it to stop on its own. However, it continued to rain, and before he knew it, the pot would threaten to overflow. He had to dump the water out first thing in the morning and straight after he returned home from work. Eventually, he began to notice water damage at the source of the leak. The white ceiling had discolored, turning a dull shade of brown. He checked the weather and realized that it would continue to rain sporadically over the next 10 days. The man was worried about the ceiling mildewing.
It's basically a type of rot.
The ceiling would mildewing and becoming an expensive repair, so he called a local handyman. Dingo. Unfortunately, the box could not sign to have the repairs done. Only his landlord could. It was a frustrating policy. The man called his landlord but could not reach him. He left a few voicemails detailing how the damage was becoming progressively worse. The man was clueless as to why his landlord would not return his calls. They usually kept in touch, speaking at least twice a month. Finally, he reasoned that he would not be held accountable for any damages sustained. One night, the man was startled awake by a massive thump. He quickly turned on his bedside lamp, and just vaguely he could see an overturned table and a large shape laying across it. He sprinted out of his apartment and called the police, gagging at the smell. The man sat in the police station with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders and a coffee mug resting in his hands. He did not know one thing. There had been a dead body in his ceiling, and the water had saturated it so badly that it caved under the weight. So far, the body was unidentifiable due to the rainwater and was being autopsied. While the man waited, he called his landlord and finally reached him. Panicking, he was explaining the situation. The landlord was just as alarmed, and the man pleaded for him to come to the station while he made his statement. The man paused as a detective crossed over to him, and he lowered his phone, wondering if the body had been identified. His blood ran immediately cold, and he shook his head with terror. The body belonged to Richard Thomason, his landlord, and he had died over a year ago. That's not what disturbed him the most. If his landlord was dead, then who was pretending to be him?
Yeah, it was me again. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted the work experience, you know.
It's hard, getting a job in I will assume this is England. Yeah, I can't fault you, Dingo, for creating work opportunities. Gasp. Alright. Number 7.
I sat on the bus. I sat on the bus on my way to school, listening to music and paying little to no attention to the other students. At one of the stops, my mind snapped back to reality. I looked towards the small house. It was Tommy's house, I thought. A hand slipped through the drapes of the window and waved the bus driver to move on. He is sick, I thought, paying no large amount of attention to the situation. The day flew by. I watched the local news channel after school, and what I heard paralyzed me. Tommy's entire family was murdered that day by an unknown suspect. After hearing this news, I moved back to my room and quietly fell asleep. The next day, I sat on that bus. We drove past Tommy's house, and the bus driver, unaware of Tommy's family's fate, stopped at his house. As I was about to get up and explain to her what had happened, something caught my eye. A pale hand slipped through the drapes of the window and waved the bus driver to move on. I sat on the bus, terrified. Spooky.
Scary.
Scary bus ride.
Scary bus driver.
And we're sent over to number 8. Seaweed for Dingo.
I am having some graphics card issues.
Oh,
Everything's flesh and black. Oh no! The true horror! Technical difficulties! Woo!
the blue screen of death. It approaches. Oh no.
The true horror! The fear of technology! Ah! All right. What voice should I do this in? Demon voice?
Who did he voice?
Yes.
Yeah, I think do that.
This is gonna be unfortunate because it's in first person.
Oh, you want to do it in trap voice?
No, that's even worse.
That would be fucking weird.
Yeah, I don't think I. Well, it's a short one, so I might be able to. But like, let me see. No, I can't do it today.
Yeah, it's fine. Oh man.
All right, a demon's grandmother. This one is called Seaweed.
My grandmother grew up in the slums of a Prohibition-era Chicago. Her family lived in a small house near the harbor. And one of her earliest memories was of a particularly hot summer when, seeking respite from the heat, she and her sister discovered a seldom used section of boardwalk near the abandoned warehouse. Every night for several weeks, the two girls would make their way down to the docks and sit together on the edge of the pier as the sun went down. My grandmother vividly and, for a time fondly, recalled the feeling of seaweed between her toes as she and her sister dangled their feet into the murky water. It wasn't until later that she returned to the pier and found that the warehouse had been demolished. Curious, she made an inquiry to the Department of Planning and Development. Apparently, the warehouse had been owned for a time by the mob, who used it as a base of operations for a local prostitution ring. associate began disposing of rival hookers by fitting them with concrete shoes and dumping them into the harbor. Investigating officers had recovered nearly 24 bodies from the waters of the secluded pier nearby. How had the bodies been discovered? A passing fisherman spotted some victim's hair floating near the surface of the water, like seaweed.
It's pretty disgusting if you think about it.
Yeah, gross.
Sure, could you imagine the feeling of seaweed under your feet when you're at the beach? And, yeah, finding out his hair. Disgusting.
Disgusting. I cannot believe it.
Oh man, that's the first link though. I'll send you the other one. Here we go. Man, it's yeah. I think that one felt the most realistic. I think.
Did you know? I want to tell you a story of one that I've heard before.
Go on.
This is a real story, by the way. A woman had broken up with her ex because he was way too clingy. And her ex essentially kept on sending letters to her, being like, "Please, take me back." Tried to do all sorts of romantic gestures, but she just said no to all of them. One day, she just stopped hearing from him. And yeah, that's it. No, she'd stopped hearing from him. She was happy that he'd finally given up and tried to move on. But she started smelling things in the house. Like it started smelling weird.
Okay.
Like her sewer system was broken or something. So she called in a plumber. Nothing was wrong with it. She called in technicians and shit like that. Nothing was wrong with it. Until one day she got sick of it and she called in like the house planner.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Turns out the smell was coming from the vents in her house.
Oh no.
What they had done is she'd called exterminators and everything because she'd heard scratching in her vents and shit. She thought it was just rats.
Oh no.
And turns out the boyfriend, the ex, had been living in the vents for quite a while. There was little cups of excrement, and like just a pack of extra cups. It seemed like they had a camping set up there, essentially. So yeah, this ex was essentially stealing food, shitting and pissing in the vents, and that's what the bad smell was.
I was kind of expecting the bad smell to be his body in the vents, but the fact that he
Nope.
lived there is somehow creepier.
Yeah.
Like, did he get arrested? Like,
Oh yeah, he definitely got arrested.
like, Jesus, that's just fucked. That's just so weird, man. No, I mean I've dealt with my fair share of clinginess before, but never anything that extreme. So that's
And that's a real story, I believe.
You know. All right, should we continue?
Yeah.
I'll start us off with a number one. The angel statue. A few years ago, a mother and father decided they needed a break, so they wanted to head out for a night on the town. They called their most trusted babysitter. When the babysitter arrived, the two children were already fast asleep in bed. So the babysitter just got to sit around and make sure everything was okay with the children. Later that night, the babysitter got bored and went to watch TV. But she couldn't watch it downstairs because they did not have cable downstairs. The parents did not want children watching too much garbage. So she called them and asked them if she could watch cable in the parents' room. Of course, the parents said it was okay. But the babysitter had one final request. She asked if she could cover up the angel statue outside the bedroom window with a blanket or cloth because it made her nervous. The phone line was dead silent for a moment. And the father who was talking to the babysitter at the time said, "Take the children and get out of the house. We'll call the police. We don't own an angel statue." The police found both of the children and the babysitter slumped in pools of their own blood within 3 minutes of the call, and no statue was ever found. Ooh.